Hello, Ron from Great Annexes. Today we're going to measure effectively and correctly Annexe Wall Kit to a roll-out awning and all the things you need to consider when it comes to correctly measuring the annex walls. A few things we've done here first to get it in the correct position before we measure. They're very important. One is that we get the annex, what we call the front wall height, usually sits between 1950 or 2 metres off the ground, measured from the ground to the actual feed-in track. So set your awning up so the feed-in track is approximately 1952 metres off the ground. The other point is that it is set up to 3 o'clock position, which means that the track itself is on the very inside of the roller, pointing directly back at the wall of the caravan and not pointing at the ground. Okay, very big mistake some people make when measuring. Ensure that that track is on the inside of the drum, or what we call 3 o'clock, pointing back at the van. Once you're in that position, then you're ready to measure. So realistically, some people sometimes are mystified around how to measure and what they're measuring and why they're measuring. Essentially what we're doing when we measure a roll-out awning's dimensions is we're actually tracing the perimeter of where the canvas annex wall will actually sit. So when it comes to measuring the walls, there's 5 measurements that we take to work out the perimeter of the wall, the size in the walls to suit the roll-out awning. And they're labelled A, B, C, D and E. And quite simply all those measurements are doing is tracing the perimeter of the canvas wall itself. So when we look at A simply measures the front wall height from the ground up to the 3 o'clock position on the roller where the wall will feed into. B travels across the blinds projection to the back of the caravan where it's attached by the sail track. C is the sail track to the ground, or what we call back wall height. And D goes directly across the bottom of the gable or the triangle, which is directly off the wall, just to confirm the width of the wall. So when you see that drawn out, it creates the perimeter and gives me the width of the annex itself. The E measurement simply is measured from edge to edge of the fabric running down the drum, and that simply tells us how long that wall needs to be. So when it comes to measuring your annex dimensions, the trick is always to work where the axles are on the caravan. This will always be a true level, as that is the pivot point. So if the caravan is not quite level, it'll always be correct at the axles. So when we measure, we're always at that point. To measure the A measurement, which is what we call front wall height, ensure you're on level ground. If you're falling away or coming up, of course that's going to alter the actual correct measurement. So it's important that you are level. Once level, simply grab your tape measure straight onto the ground and measure it straight up to the feed-in throat on the roller. And this one in particular happens to be 1980. That's A measurement sorted, that's your front wall height. When it comes to B measurement, this is the blind projection coming from the caravan to the inside of the roller. So if you can visualise, when we take this measurement to B, everywhere you take the measurement, the fabric's going to be there in physical sense. So for instance, when you measure, you wouldn't measure to the front, because that would then say the fabric has to come to the front, but it can't pass through the roller. It can't physically move through the roller. It can only come to the roller, then stop. So that's where you take your measurement. So when you're measuring, always think about where will the fabric actually go, where will it be to, and measure to that point. Sometimes you may need a friend just to help you hold the other end, but nonetheless, we simply measure from the sail track on the caravan, and we basically look up onto the actual awning track, or where the inside of that drum is, and take the measurement to that point. This particular one happens to be 2315. That is now the top level following the awning's fabric on the rake that the wall needs to be. Now we move on to the C measurement. The C measurement is the rear height of our annex wall, and it's basically one of the more easier measurements to take because you can't get it too wrong. So you're always at the axles. We're going from the ground where the wheels are touching the ground, or tyres are touching the ground, up to the underside of the annex sail track, or the awning sail track. So all we're doing, putting our tape directly at the axles onto the ground, and we're measuring up to the underside of the awning. This particular one is 24.95, and I'm measuring to the actual fabric itself. The next one is D measurement. Now what we're doing here is we're getting a measurement directly off the wall to the feed-in throat on the drum. And this just confirms the width of the wall. And this one's simple. This one is simply straight off the wall into the inside of the roller drum, and that tells us the width of the awning. This one is 22.50. So we're basically drawing a straight line from this point straight into the wall of the caravan or the motorhome. That gives us the direct width of the wall. The last measurement we take in measuring the wall dimensions is the E measurement. The E measurement basically gives us the length of what this long wall will be, and it's very simple to measure. You're just simply sitting the tape on the very edge of the fabric, and we're going to walk that to the other end of the fabric and take that measurement. This particular one is 45.20. Now I know the length of this long wall. I already know the height from our A measurement, so we can now build that wall successfully. To recap on those measurements, all they are doing for us is tracing the perimeter of the wall with a D measurement, which confirms the width of the wall, and an E measurement, which confirms the length of this awning or this sidewall, so that we can now plot on our tables when we make your annex exactly the dimensions it needs to be. Always remembering we need to be on level ground, and we need to be measuring at the axles of the caravan. As long as you get those factors in play and think about where the canvas physically needs to be housed, and visualise, if you can, where that's happening, it will ensure that you measure correctly.